Hello guys, it's boy Doppler from Sweden, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys all the knife patterns in CS that have rare variants. So first off, I'm not really counting float-based patterns as rare patterns. For example, a rust coat can look like this, where it's kinda steel metal, or it can look like this, where it's just fully brown, depending on the float. I'm not counting this because this isn't really a rare pattern or so, it's just a feature of the skin, I guess. And same with this one. Oh my god! Yeah, this looks like just straight poo. First on the list is vanilla skins. There isn't any pattern on it, so it can't really be any rare patterns, but they can have different floats. For example, this Navaja knife is technically factory new because of the float, which makes it very rare, but like I said, I'm not counting it, so I'm not gonna count it. Next up, the fade. Now, of course, everyone knows a fade can have different fade percentages, and on this skin, the rare pattern would be considered the full fade, which looks like this on the karambit. Usually full fade means where you can see the yellow, which is very nice. Usually on a full fade, it means you can see all three colors, so the purple, the pink, and the yellow. However, the fade can also be the lowest, like with this butterfly. This is technically the worst fade you can have, and this is also a bit rare because it's legit the most extreme bad fade, which is also sought after, especially if you have some tiger strike gloves. So both ends of the spectrum, full fade and no fade, are both very rare. Now, next up on the list, we have today's sponsor, which is SkinsMonkey. They're one of the best and easy to use trading sites for CSGO, and it's perfect for switching up your inventory to play with new skins, especially now for CS2. And by clicking the link in the description or using code ANOMALY, you get a deposit bonus of up to 35%, which is insane. And if you're making your first trade, you can also put code ANOMALY and you get up to $5 for free. Plus, they've got many nice extras like freebies for free skins and free balance and 24/7 support. So if you want to try them out, then please do so from the link in the description, and thank you once again SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. Next skin in the list is the Scorched skin. Now, on most types of knives, there aren't any rare Scorch patterns. However, on the stiletto here, you can see the blade has both colors and looks kinda gray and black. However, there is a rare pattern where it's fully black, called a black gem. Now, these are actually pretty expensive, and in-game, they do actually look really cool. There you can see it a bit better. Fully black blade, which is very cool. But other than that, obviously, a Scorched knife might... Where is it? It's just gone. However, other than that, there isn't really that much interest in a Scorched skin. Next one, the Forest DD-Pat. And no, the Forest DD-Pat doesn't really have any rare patterns. There are, however, some made-up patterns, like this Ursus Forest DD-Pat that Linda has, which supposedly has a little heart here in the pattern, but obviously this is just made up. It's not actually a well-known pattern or variant of the skin. Next one is the Boreal Forest. Same here, no real recognized variants, because overall it's just a pretty boring skin. Another boring skin is the Urban Masked. This time we also have a stiletto, because you guessed it, just like with the Scorched, on most knives there's no rare pattern, but on the stiletto you can have the blade fully white this time, not black. This one is also pretty expensive just because it's such a niche pattern, but pretty recently this kind of became a well-known pattern. Before, like, the last year or so, I wouldn't say this was a recognized pattern. After that one, we have the Safari Mesh. Just like with the other ones, we don't really have any very recognized patterns. There are some people who say they might have a Safari Mesh gem, where there is very little of this fence pattern, but honestly, nothing that's really recognized, so this one doesn't really have anything. Next skin, the Knight. No, once again, this has no pattern. It's just always a black blade and this like dark blue handles, but no pattern variants whatsoever. Next up, we have the Stained. Now, once again, this one doesn't really have that many patterns on it. There are some people who've said that these splashes somehow look like something, but that's just fake.
That motherfucker back there is not real.
No real recognized pattern on a Stained. Next skin is the Crimson Web, and yes, of course, this one has a lot of different patterns. The patterns depend on the web of the blade. Like you can see, this here play side doesn't really have any webbing. On the back side, there is one big web here. You might think that this small thing also is a web because it looks like it, but this wouldn't be classified as a web. This stat track Karambit Crimson web does, however, have a web almost centered on it, and obviously you'd want a centered web, but sometimes they can have 2, 3, even 4 webs on the play side, depending, of course, what knife it is. My friend Remix has actually done a very good pattern guide to Karambit Crimson webs, where you can see the different patterns, and he's ranked all of them and shown which are good, which are bad, and explained his reasoning behind the rankings. So this one you should definitely go check out. Next knife, the blue steel. Once again, we don't really have any different types, but like I mentioned in the beginning, this is what the blue steel should look like. However, if it's very bad float, it may be a bit more purple, but that has to do with the float and nothing to do with the actual pattern. The next one is probably the one everyone knows about, case hardens and their blue gems. This might be what a normal M9 bayonet case harden is supposed to look like. You can see a little bit of blue, a little bit of gold, but a blue gem looks like this. Basically, the more blue you have, the better they are. And here we have another example of a Karambit case harden with a very, very, very blue play side. This is actually the best pattern you can have on a Karambit and the best pattern you can have on an M9. These, of course, are very, very expensive and very rare. And like I said, almost everyone knows about the blue gems, but many people don't know about the reverse, the gold gem, which looks like this. This is the best pattern for a paracord case hardened gold gem, and I actually have it, pattern number 521, and yes, it's much, much cheaper than a blue gem. I also have another one, not as cool though, the stiletto case hardened. Sadly, it's battle scarred, so it's a bit harder to see. The full blade is indeed only gold, which is very cool. Next up, slaughter knives. Now, everyone knows about slaughters because they're a very old skin, and of course, the rare variants of them, like the diamond pattern. Diamond pattern is by far still the rarest and most expensive version of any type of slaughter. Bayonets having double diamond patterns and this Karambit having a centered diamond are both very famous, but what many people don't know is that back in 2013, 2014, and 15, there were so many different patterns. This, for example, was called the Phoenix pattern because it, I guess, kind of looks like 2 wings. And on the back side here, this would be a heart pattern. And over here, this would be the dog bone. Basically, there were just so many made up versions of the slaughter. Every single one of these little pieces would have a different name. But nowadays, no one really knows about those, and everyone just knows about the diamond pattern. And frankly, that's the only one that even catches a little bit of overpay. Next up, we have 4 skins in Next up, we have 4 skins in a row that don't really have any special pattern. First off, rust coat. Like I said, the float changes it, but it doesn't count. Next up, the ultraviolet. Like the knight, it's just a set pattern of black and purple, no special pattern. After that, we have the Damascus steel, which has different patterns, you can see here. However, on the play side, it's much larger, but there's no real defined patterns or overpay. And finally, we have the tiger tooth. And yes, there are some parts of the pattern that might have a lot of stripes and some places that have very few, but no one really cares, and they all cost the same. Getting into some more interesting stuff, the Dopplers. Now, this is a phase 1 Doppler, and while there are a lot of different ones that have more black or more color, most of the phase 1s fetch the same price, and there are no super defined patterns. That's, however, not true for the phase 2. Here, there are a lot of different versions. Some have a lot of black or dark spots, like you can see here, but the play side on this one is one of the cleaner ones that you're gonna find because it's all fully colored pink and no dark spots, basically. In CSGO, there used to be very defined patterns called Pink Galaxy, but now in CS2, it's a lot harder to tell any difference just because of the way they updated the Dopplers. So I would say really the effect of having a Pink Galaxy pattern has kind of fallen compared to in CSGO. Next is phase 3, which similar to phase 1 has different dark spots and colored spots, but not really any well-known patterns or variants. And lastly, phase 4, just like the phase 2, has some sort of blue galaxy patterns or whatever, but on phase 2 is really the only one that matters for regular Dopplers. Now, you might not know it, but for Doppler gems like the ruby, there are actually different patterns as well. The patterns on these would not have to do with the color because they're all red, it would have to do with the pattern on them. As you can see here on the play side, we have this very large dark spot, and on the back side here, there is a bit of dark spots, but on this next one, you can see it is very, very, very clean. This would basically be called a no smoke ruby Doppler. And just this small difference of smoke or no smoke actually carries a lot of price difference. Sometimes people overpay several $1,000s just to have a gem with very little smoke. This of course also goes for the Karambit Sapphire. This one has a little less of a smoke pattern. And for the final Doppler, the Black Pearl. Now, the Black Pearl is one of the skins that in CS2, in my opinion, got the best boosts because it looks so good now. And the rare version of a Black Pearl, which is even rarer than just having a Black Pearl, already the rarest knife type in the game, are called the Glacier patterns. It was a lot easier to see the difference in CSGO. Here you can maybe see it a bit better. This is an old picture of an M9 Black Pearl from CSGO. You can see there's different colors on every Black Pearl. You have this deep red color, you have this weird green color, but the color you're really after on one of these Glacier gems is this ice blue color, which is much easier to see here in CSGO than it is in CS2. Some of these were selling for many thousands of overpay back in CSGO, but sadly now in CS2, I just think that they've nerfed the Glacier pattern a lot, so they all kind of look very similar to each other now. Next one is Marble Fade, which by far has one of the most famous special patterns, which of course is on the play side. It's only blue and red, and this is called the Fire and Ice pattern. Ice and fire! Now, not every single Marble Fade knife has a special Fire and Ice pattern. For example, a Talon knife, Fire and Ice, looks like this. You can still see there's quite a bit of yellow on the tip, but because this is the max blue and red you can have, this is considered a Fire and Ice on the Talon. Another knife that also has Fire and Ice is the Bayonet. You can see this one clearly Fire and Ice and looks very, very beautiful, but skins like, for example, the M9 Marble and the Butterfly Marble don't have any Fire and Ice pattern. They're just too big. But of course, people still found a way to overprice their M9 Marbles and Butterfly Marbles by not saying it's a Fire and Ice, but rather a red tip. Like this one has a very large red tip and therefore should be worth some overpay. For the Gamma Dopplers, phase 1, it's kind of the same as the regular Dopplers. Not really defined patterns, but different levels of darkness and color. Kind of the same for phase 2. You can see there are different levels of color. Like this part is pretty dark, but the play side is mostly colored. But unlike the Pink Galaxy, this one doesn't really have a name. The phase 3, however, definitely has a different name for their special version, which is either called a Cyan gem or a Diamond gem. These have actually been going for some very high prices recently, and rightfully so, because they look so good. And finally, for the Gamma Doppler phase 4, basically the same. Wait, is this even a phase 4? I inspected a phase 2. This is a phase 4. Bro, there's barely any difference. You see, this is the problem with Dopplers in CS2. Many of them have just been made to look the same as each other, so it's a bit hard to tell them apart. The final Doppler or Gamma Doppler pattern is of course the Emerald, which also can have the no smoke pattern. Here you can see on the play side, there is not much smoke at all. This one, however, has a lot of smoke. You can see here, dark spots, and fun fact, this one, that is the no smoke, I actually had back in the day, and I sold it for quite a bit more just because it was a no smoke pattern, pattern 575. Very, very sick. Next up, we have 4 different skins that all don't really have a special version. Of course, Bright Water, you don't really have any special patterns because it's similar to the Boreal Forest. The Lure Knife is a set pattern. It can't have any different variations, so obviously it can't have different patterns. The Black Laminate, also the same here, is just always looking the same. And finally, Autotronic as well. They all look the same, no different patterns. But the last skin we have in the list is the Freehand, which technically can have some different patterns. However, I haven't really seen any of them go for any overpay. You can see this side has some purple and a lot of black and white, but the play side has a lot, I think max purple, which some people may want, some people might not want. This version is very little purple and a lot of this like graffiti, and you can see the little man here that's part of the pattern, but honestly, no one really cares about it. There we have it. If there were any different knife skins you were wondering about, or what different rare versions or patterns there were, well, now you know. If I missed any, then please let me know, unless they are super specific, like the anomaly flip knife slaughter. It's just something someone made up and thought it was funny. So thank you guys for watching. Now I'm going to go let out a tier for all the people who bought the crazy expensive Black Pearl glaciers back in CSGO when it mattered, unlike now when they kind of all look the same. Whoopee!